They left home with bus fare, movie money, and matching smiles. Just two sisters, Barbara and Patricia Grimes, stepping out for a Friday night treat on December 28, 1956, completely unaware their lives were about to become one of Chicago's most haunting and enduring mysteries. 3 weeks later, the bustling city was stripped of an innocence it would never reclaim. December 28, 1956. The holiday season was winding down, but a festive energy still hummed in the Chicago air. For 15-year-old Barbara, pop culture was everything, and she had memorized every Elvis article in every fan magazine she could find. Her younger sister, 12-year-old Patricia, just wanted a bucket of buttered popcorn. Their mother, Loretta, a single mother raising her children in the McKinley Park neighborhood, stood on the porch, counting out change for their bus ride and movie tickets. She pressed the coins into their hands, a routine gesture of care. Then, a quick kiss for each, and a final, familiar reminder to be on the last bus home. The girls, full of youthful exuberance and the promise of Elvis on the big screen in Love Me Tender, promised they would. Of course, they would. Inside the Brighton Theater, the air was thick with the smell of popcorn and the collective anticipation of a packed house. For a few blissful hours, the world outside, with its looming shadows and unspoken dangers, simply didn't exist. When the credits finally rolled, Barbara zipped up her sister's coat, a protective gesture. They stepped out of the warm theater and into the crisp, dark December night. And then, the world swallowed them whole. By sunrise, the carefree joy of the evening had curdled into a cold knot of fear. Loretta paced her kitchen, a cigarette trembling between her fingers, telling neighbors she felt a hollow spot where her daughters should be. It was a premonition, a chilling void that would soon spread far beyond her small kitchen. Chicago in the mid-50s still clung to a certain naivete. Parents rarely worried about their children walking a few blocks to a movie theater. The disappearance of Barbara and Patricia Grimes didn't just challenge that innocence, it yanked it out by the roots, leaving a gaping wound in the city's psyche. Overnight, parents started holding their children a little tighter, their eyes scanning every shadow. Within 48 hours, what began as a mother's frantic search had exploded into one of the largest missing persons investigations in Chicago history. Detectives, under immense public pressure, questioned every usher and employee near the Brighton Theater. The newspapers, which normally focused on politics and sports, transformed into a continuous bulletin board for the GRIME Sisters. They printed the girls' smiling school photos above the fold, day after day. Radio hosts, their voices tinged with urgency, begged for tips. Even Elvis Presley himself made a public plea for the girls' safe return. The community's response was immediate and overwhelming. Patrolmen knocked on thousands of doors, asking questions and peering into basements. Store clerks handed out flyers with the girls' pictures. A reward fund, initially modest, quickly jumped to a staggering amount, a testament to the city's desperate hope. Everyone, it seemed, was looking. Yet, despite this unprecedented effort, no one produced a single credible sighting of the girls after they left the theater. The hollow spot Loretta felt in her heart began to spread, house by house, until the entire city felt it too. It was a chilling realization. Two girls had simply vanished, leaving behind only questions and a gnawing, collective dread. The innocence of a generation was lost that winter night. Humans despise a mystery, and when faced with one as baffling as the GRIME Sisters' disappearance, imaginations often step in to fill the void. This case became a magnet for sightings, each offering a fleeting glimmer of hope before dissolving into thin air. A waitress swore she served the sisters burgers 2 days after they vanished. A bus driver insisted he'd seen them heading south, perhaps to Nashville. A hotel clerk even produced a registration card signed Beath Grimes. Each claim, plausible on the surface, forced exhausted detectives to chase shadows across state lines, always arriving just after the trail evaporated. It was a cruel cycle of false hope for a grieving family and a desperate city. One rumor, however, proved more persistent. It led police to Edward Benny Bedwell, a part-time dishwasher with a ducktail haircut and a notable stutter. His employer, hearing the citywide appeals, contacted police, sparking an intense new line of inquiry. Detectives took Bedwell to a motel room and grilled him for 40 grueling hours. Eventually, Bedwell emerged with a signed confession. It was a disjointed narrative of a joyride, liquor, panic, and a desperate decision to dump 2 bodies west of town. The problem was, Bedwell's story didn't add up. His geography was a mess, and the details didn't align with the actual landscape outside of Chicago. When investigators took him to the alleged dump site, he stared at the desolate winter landscape and simply shrugged. "Looks different in the daytime," he muttered, rendering his confession useless. They held him for 30 days, but without a body or corroborating evidence, a conviction was impossible. Benny Bedwell, the man who confessed to murder, was allowed to drift out of state, an enigma who had come tantalizingly close to providing answers, only to recede back into the shadows. The faint hope that Barbara and Patricia might still be alive persisted through January. Then, on January 22, 1957, that hope was brutally extinguished. A construction worker, Leonard Prescott, pulled his car over on German Church Road in Willow Springs and stepped behind a guardrail. That's when he saw what he first thought were mannequins, stripped bare and partially covered by snow. There they were. Barbara lay on her back, her arms folded across her chest. Patricia was curled on her side, as if still trying to stay warm against the cold. The scene was one of profound, heartbreaking stillness. The coroner's report was a litany of what wasn't there: no bullets, no slashes, no obvious signs of a violent struggle. The official cause of death was listed as secondary shock due to exposure, cold, clinical words that felt obscene next to the names of two teenage girls. It meant their bodies had shut down due to the extreme conditions. But then, a new, perplexing detail emerged: 3 tiny, post-mortem puncture wounds dotted Patricia's chest, almost surgical in their precision. Unexplained, this detail would become one of the most frustrating enigmas of the case. The snow had acted as a grim preserver, keeping the bodies in such a state that their mother, Loretta, could identify them by a small, familiar scar. The hollow spot she'd felt that first morning now became an unfillable crater, a permanent scar on her soul and on the city's conscience. The discovery shattered any lingering hope and plunged Chicago into a profound state of grief and outrage. Benny Bedwell, despite his debunked confession, wasn't the only shadow cast over the GRIME sisters' fate. The sprawling investigation kept turning up other names, each offering a flicker of potential answers before slipping through the net. One of the most compelling figures was Charles Leroy Melquist. Though baby-faced, Melquist was a convicted killer, having murdered a teenage girl in 1953. He lived just 2 bus transfers from the Brighton Theatre, and a chilling piece of evidence made him a strong person of interest. Melquist owned a camera lens etched with concentric circles that investigators realized matched the exact diameter of the strange puncture wounds on Patricia's chest. Detectives grilled Melquist, but he produced a frustratingly airtight alibi, corroborated by coworkers and time cards. Charges were never filed against him for the Grimes murders, but his name was whispered for decades in Chicago, a cautionary tale of the evil that could lurk just around the corner. Suspicion also turned toward Chicago's organized underbelly. Rumors circulated about a South Side vice ring that supplied runaways to out-of-state brothels. Could the sisters have fallen prey to such an organization? The theory gained enough traction that a Senate subcommittee investigating organized crime requested the police file on the matter. In a twist that only deepened the cynicism surrounding the case, that file mysteriously disappeared from a precinct cabinet, never to be seen again. Every theory and every suspect carried just enough weight to fuel speculation, but never enough for an arrest. The case grew colder with each passing year, but it was never forgotten. The ghosts of Barbara and Patricia Grimes continued to haunt Chicago, whispering questions that no one could answer. Even as suspects faded, the physical evidence whispered its own perplexing narrative. Microscopic tests on the girl's skin discovered faint traces of industrial lead paint, the kind used in factories and warehouses. This suggested the girls may have been held in a non-residential setting. Adding to this puzzle, a half-empty oil can was found near their bodies. Its label matched paint used at a shuttered freight yard not far from Willow Springs. This seemed like a breakthrough. Investigators launched another painstaking search, tracing every employee who had worked there. Yet, none of them matched the profiles of Bedwell, Melquist, or any other known offenders. It was another dead end. And then there were those 3 tiny puncture wounds on Patricia's chest. They baffled every expert who examined them. Years later, in 1970, a dedicated evidence technician tried to recreate the wounds using a variety of tools: a leather punch, a needle, a radio antenna. Nothing lined up. The 3 holes remained their own unreadable signature, a silent testament to a killer whose methods defied understanding. The evidence, it seemed, was as elusive as justice itself. The tragedy of the Grime sisters didn't just haunt a city, it consumed a family. Loretta, their mother, became a living monument to grief. Though she eventually moved, she kept her phone number unchanged, clinging to the desperate hope that one day, someone with answers would dial it. Loretta's life became a relentless vigil. She attended every parole hearing that might remotely involve a suspect, clutching a handbag stuffed with newspaper clippings. Each hearing was a fresh wound, a renewed attempt to find closure that was always denied. Life, in its cruel march forward, continued around her. Her surviving children grew up, married, and had their own kids. Every family birthday cake and every holiday gathering came with an unspoken footnote: 2 chairs that should have been filled. The absence was a constant, aching presence. In 1977, when Elvis Presley died, radio stations replayed his heartfelt plea for the GRIME Sisters' safe return. Loretta, by then a woman etched with sorrow, pressed her ear to the speaker and wept. She wept for Elvis, but also for the profound irony that the world still remembered her girls, yet no one knew what had truly happened to them. When Loretta passed away in 1989, her obituary carried a poignant request. Instead of flowers, donations were to be sent to the Missing Children's Network, in memory of Barbara and Patricia, still sought. It was a final testament to her enduring love and her lifelong quest for justice. Even in death, Loretta Grimes refused to let her daughters be forgotten. Decades later, the case remains a thorn in Chicago's history. A new breed of armchair detectives, armed with GPS and online forums, now pore over old police reports and propose new theories. Some insist the girls could have been lured to the Willow Springs woods, suggesting a planned abduction rather than a random act. Other theories suggest a more prolonged ordeal. They posit that Barbara and Patricia were held alive for weeks before being released into the brutal sub-zero temperatures of late January. This would explain secondary shock due to exposure as the cause of death, a calculated act designed to let nature finish what malice had begun. Then there's a newer, more unsettling thread. This theory suggests those perplexing puncture wounds were a failed attempt to extract blood or bone marrow, perhaps for an underground medical experiment. While no paper trail supports this chilling hypothesis, Chicago's documented history of covert projects in that era lends the idea a disturbing staying power. Every December, true crime forums reignite with fervent discussion. Timelines are re-examined, old articles are reposted, and inevitably, someone posts a comment like, "I think my grandpa knew something," before moderators demand proof that never arrives. The case has become a kind of urban legend, a perpetual puzzle ensuring the questions continue to echo through the digital age. This isn't just a historical footnote, it's a living mystery. If you've lived in Chicago since '56, if your family ran a diner on Archer Avenue, if you've heard stories passed down through generations about that harrowing winter, listen closely. If you've ever seen a photo tucked away in an attic, perhaps a faded snapshot of two girls with Elvis fan club pins standing beside someone whose face now raises the hair on your neck, don't keep it to yourself. The detectives at Area 3, though decades have passed, still answer the phone. This story isn't just about what happened to Barbara and Patricia, it's about what happened to Chicago. It's about the enduring power of a mystery and our collective responsibility to remember. So, if you have even the slightest shred of information, something that's been nagging at you for years, please reach out. Drop a comment below. Share this video. Talk about it. Keep the algorithm alive, because maybe the next scroll, the next conversation, lands in front of the one conscience that can't stay quiet any longer. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, it costs nothing, but it keeps this story breathing and keeps the hope of justice alive. Barbara and Patricia Grimes. They would be in their 80s today. Aunts with silver hair, perhaps, who'd playfully sing Elvis off-key at family cookouts, their voices raspy with age and laughter. They'd have lives filled with memories, triumphs, and heartbreak. Instead, they remain forever 15 and 12, sealed in black and white glossies, their innocent smiles frozen in time. Somewhere in Chicago, a bus still rumbles down Archer Avenue, its destination unchanged. Snow falls and melts, year after year. And still, the question hangs in the air like frost in the lungs: who took these two sisters from the bright lights of a movie house to the desolate silence of a roadside ditch? And how many more winters must pass until we finally know? Until that answer comes, the hollow spot Loretta felt in her heart, that gaping void of loss, belongs to all of us. It aches every time two kids walk out a door with coins in their pockets and promise on their faces. Keep watching, keep asking, keep the porch light on, not just for Barbara and Patricia, but for every child who has vanished, and for the hope that one day, every mystery finds its truth.